Hi, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Not Your Mama's Murder in the Headlines, the podcast where we talk about true crime stories that rocked the headlines this week. I'm Elisa Bird-Hill, and today we are going to be talking about why are there so many shootings, and is Charlotte the new Florida? These headlines are from May 15th to May 22nd. And this episode will be coming out on May 26th when you're hearing this. So that is Desiree's 10th birthday. I can't believe I am about to have a 10-year-old. That feels impossible, and I swear the last decade has gone by in the blink of an eye. One of my favorite quotes is from the song All Star, and it says, "The years start coming and they don't stop coming," and that is the truest thing I've ever heard. So, if you know Desi, be sure to wish her happy birthday today. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and jump right in. A Texas mother has been charged with 2 counts of capital murder and 1 count of arson after her 2 children, ages 5 and 7, were found dead inside of a burned car in a warehouse parking lot. Nearby CCTV footage showed the mother set the fire alone and on purpose. The investigation is ongoing to determine if the children were dead before the fire was started or if they died as a result of the fire. The local Department of Children and Family Services did confirm that they had been involved with the family in the past and they were familiar with the mother. They stated that her mental state was likely the cause. She is being held on $2.1 million bond. Throughout this episode, you're going to notice a lot of bond discrepancies, so keep that in mind. $2.1 million for 2 counts of capital murder and a count of arson. Moving on over to Charlotte, which I told you in the title maybe is becoming the new Florida. I was not expecting Charlotte to come up so much, but a neighborhood dispute in Charlotte, North Carolina ended in murder. Though the cause of the argument is unknown, police say that it started around 6:30 p.m. in the driveway of the victim. His name was Odell Davis. He was cleaning the tire of a vehicle when the shooter, Lionel Smith, pulled a handgun out of his backpack and shot him. Lionel did remain on the scene and was arrested, but he did refuse to talk to investigators. That is all the information I could find on that one. It was very fresh, so I assume there will be more in the coming days. Alex Murdaugh, which I can't believe I'm talking about him again. I'm so over seeing him so much. I thought we were done with it. Someone should have taught him how to just sit down and be quiet, because we don't need to see his name in the headlines so much. But anyway, he made headlines again this week, twice. The first time was when his prosecutors announced that they are considering putting the death penalty on the table for his new trial, which I have opinions about. As I have mentioned with the Athena Strand case, I think the bar for the death penalty needs to be very high, and I will admit that I don't know that I feel that Alex Murdaugh would meet that criteria. I also think that it is harder to convince a jury to put someone to death, especially, I'm trying to correct the way I say that. I absolutely know that especially is wrong, and I've said it that way my entire life. So I am trying to always go back and correct myself. Especially with the notoriety of this case and the fact that less evidence will be admitted this go around, I think the death penalty could cause them to lose the whole thing. Because if you're having a jury face either he gets the death penalty and dies, or he gets to go free, they're probably going to choose go free. Again, especially without, I think I did it that time, especially without some of that evidence that was entered last time with the financial crimes. As much as I would love to see him get a harsher sentence after begging for a new trial, I think the safer option to ensure conviction again is to just go for life again. Now, the second thing that he was in the news for was that it was announced that he filed a federal lawsuit for $600,000 against Becky Hill. Becky is the court clerk that pleaded guilty to tampering with the jury during the initial trial. Now, I do actually think that Alex has a good chance of winning this lawsuit since she has already pleaded guilty, she admitted the guilt, she apologized for her actions. The good news, though, is that because Alex owes so many people so much money, that even if he wins, he will not see a dime of the money. It will go to his victims, and then if there were to be any left over, it would likely go to his legal team for their fees. Hopefully, we do not have to hear about Alec Murdaugh for a while until the trial starts. A Virginia judge has dropped all charges for child neglect in the case of Ebony Parker. She is the assistant principal who was charged for not acting to prevent a first grade teacher from being shot by her 6-year-old student back in 2023. The prosecution claimed Ebony had ignored at least 3 attempts by staff to report the student had brought a 9mm handgun to school and had it in his possession. While criminal charges have been dropped, in November of 2025, Ebony was ordered to pay the teacher $10 million. Ebony's team has appealed that ruling as well. We're going back to Charlotte now. And it is just occurring to me that this last story, the teacher principal story, is in Virginia. I think Virginia might come up a couple of times in this one too. So maybe Virginia and Charlotte are both the new Florida. Anyways, a Charlotte 19-year-old has been charged with first-degree murder and 4 counts of assault with intent to kill. This follows a March shooting that broke out at an overcrowded pool during a pool party. The initial shooting caused crowd panic, resulting in 2 more injuries. An official trial date has not been set in that case. In February of this year, Audrey Jones called 911 to report her brother Stevie needed help as he was experiencing a mental health crisis and was holding a knife. 3 officers arrived on the scene and attempted to de-escalate the situation as Stevie moved out into the street, still holding the knife. Then a 4th officer arrives. Within 34 seconds of arriving at the scene, this officer approaches Stevie with his firearm drawn, yelling commands, and then he quickly fires 9 shots into Stevie. Stevie died from those wounds. Once internal investigation looked into the body cam footage, they realized that the officer had not met their requirements to use deadly force. The officer has now been charged with first-degree manslaughter. He turned himself in and was later released on a $50,000 bond. As I said, you're going to find bonds very interesting in this one. First-degree manslaughter by an officer, $50,000. And I'm sure most of you know, but for those of you who don't, when you pay a bond, you can pay it straight cash if you have $50,000 laying around, fine. Or you can pay 10% of it to a bail bondsman and they get you out. So it's actually 10% of $50,000. Or in the Texas mother's case, it's 10% of $2.1 million. So her 10% was more than his entire bond. Keeping on the officer theme, an Arizona officer shot a domestic dispute participant at a local pawn shop. A man and woman entered the pawn shop. The woman had a cut on her hand and actually mouthed the words, "Call 911" to the worker. The worker did, and when the police arrived, they demanded that the couple separate. At that time, the man got upset, grabbed the woman holding a knife to her neck. Police tased him in an attempt to get him to let her go. After the taser didn't do the job, the officer shot the suspect, injuring him, and charges are pending against him. Deshaun Taylor of Roanoke, Virginia, there we go with Virginia again, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault after he stabbed a 17-year-old at a gas station. Apparently, he approached her car, accusing her of stealing his cell phone. When she denied the allegations, he attempted to stab both her and her female passenger. The girls were able to flee the scene in car and called first responders. They were taken to the hospital and treated for non-life-threatening injuries. The suspect fled and wasn't arrested until 2 days later. A trial date has not been set for him. Doorbell camera footage caught not one but two shootings in South Carolina this week. Sean Hubbard, or Sheen, probably Sean, was originally hired to fix a vehicle at the victim's home. After an argument over how the job should be done, he allegedly began terrorizing the home of the people who had hired him. He finally went to the home and fired a shot through the front door. He returned to the same home hours later and fired another shot, this time killing a 19-year-old occupant. He was arrested and charged with murder, possession of a weapon during a violent crime, and firing a firearm into a dwelling. He was denied bond, so no bond for him at all. On May 15th of 1986, the body of 22-year-old Roberta Walls, who went by Robbie, was found in a field behind of an elementary school in Virginia Beach. Maybe it is Virginia that is the new Florida. She had been raped and murdered. She was last seen leaving her job at the public library to go and meet friends, but she never arrived for those plans. Unfortunately, there wasn't much evidence and her case quickly went cold, but the police in Virginia Beach didn't give up. In 2001, they were able to get a DNA sample that had been taken from the crime scene back in '86, but at the time, they did not have the technology to test it. Over 30 men were tested against that DNA profile and they were ruled out. Then it was uploaded to the national database with no matches being found from there either. They didn't give up again. In 2017, they were able to use the DNA sample to complete a composite of what the suspect may have looked like. That also went nowhere. In 2023, they started comparing the DNA to that in the genealogy databases and were eventually able to track the suspect's DNA directly to 66-year-old Charles Randall Berry. Charles was a Navy serviceman who was stationed near the base. It appears he had no connection to Robbie, and it was a crime of opportunity. Charles was arrested in Connecticut and is awaiting extradition back to Virginia Beach, where he will face capital murder and rape charges. He is being held on a $10 million bond. So, I just want to, again, one count of capital murder and one rape, $10 million. Police officer, first-degree manslaughter, $50,000. Mother, 2 counts of capital murder and arson, $2.1 million. It's really all over the place. And I know that is up to different jurisdictions and states and even departments. Fine. It really stood out to me that the bonds were so all over the place in this one. And while we're on the topic of this one, I want to talk about the genealogy. I know people are so afraid to take 23andMe DNA tests and things like that to find their ancestors because of something like this happening. In my opinion, it's a good thing. If your great uncle Sammy or whoever raped and murdered someone 40 years ago, I would hope that you would want to know about it. I would hope that you would want that person to have justice, no matter what that looked like. So, I encourage everyone to not let that hold you back from doing it. In San Diego, 2 heavily armed teenagers dressed in camouflage approached an Islamic center where 140 students were attending school. The mosque's security guard immediately attended to stop the teenagers, which caused a gunfight to break out. Even though he was injured, the security guard was able to get the school put on lockdown and successfully prevented any children from being harmed before passing from his injuries. 2 brave community members got the boys' attention and drew them out into the parking lot of the mosque. They were both shot and killed. The teens then fled to a car where they both died by suicide. The attack was live-streamed to an extreme racist website, so this is thought to be a hate crime. 22-year-old Robert Rothwell III was killed while he was riding as a passenger on Interstate 71 in Ohio. A gunman in a black SUV and wearing gloves leaned out of a car and fired the shot that hit Robert in the shoulder and then traveled to his heart, killing him. This also caused the driver of the car that Robert was in to crash. 71 was shut down for over 4 hours. No one has been arrested and charged, and the police are unsure if this was a random act of violence or a targeted attack. The investigation is still ongoing. Right now, that is all of the public information that is out there, but that is so scary to me. Just out minding your own business, and then the next thing you know, you're shot and killed. That is terrifying. I got one more here, and this one surprised me. Ryan Upchurch. And I wish I could say that that was someone I never thought that I would be covering, but if you're familiar with him, you probably know he is often off his rocker. He got famous for making music, kind of in the country rap scene, without signing to a label. He calls a lot of big artists that do have labels sellouts and makes videos ranting about random things like who people really are behind the scenes and how they want to be friends with him until they get big. He's done this with Luke Combs and Morgan Wallen and Jelly Roll, which that's exactly what got him in trouble this time. In 2022, 16-year-old Keely Rodney drowned in California. Keely's family started a GoFundMe to raise money for her search and rescue and other expenses. Upchurch went online, and I think it's important to remember that he has about 3 million followers. So he went online and put out a video of him calling the whole thing a scam by her family to get money. He even doxed them, revealing their address and posting photos of them, as well as encouraging his followers, which he calls Creek Squad, to go to their home. This caused the family to be very worried about their safety, and the family actually filed a defamation lawsuit and won. Upchurch has now been court-ordered to pay them $18 million in damages and for emotional distress. Upchurch is a wild ride. I obviously am from a small town in Tennessee, and so I, of course, am familiar with some of his music. But watching him online is sometimes scary because he really does just rant and rave, and it's hard to follow what he's talking about, and he's kind of all over the place. And so I hate that he did that to the family, but it does not surprise me that he has eventually gotten in trouble, especially when you go from talking about someone with a big name and a big stage that could say something back to you to just these people who unfortunately lost their daughter and granddaughter in a terrible drowning accident. Why he thought it was fake, I don't know, but he was loud and wrong, and he's going to be paying for it. So that is all I have for today. This episode is short, and the reason for that is because every single day when I was researching the headlines from that day, Mackenzie Shirilla and the documentary were in the headlines. People weren't talking about the crimes that were happening on that day because they were talking about the documentary and the result of it. It's funny to see how these documentaries affect headlines and bury the current cases. Literally every single day when I looked it up, it was either Mackenzie's name or Netflix or her parents or the crash, and I'm trying to avoid all of that until I get Friday's episode ready. Literally everyone was talking about it, and while I understand why and how captivating it could be, I almost feel like giving it too much attention takes away from other victims in the big picture and things. I feel like sometimes we as a true crime community can just get a little hyper focused on a certain case because of documentaries and things like that, and I don't know that that's always a good thing. Things like this have been affected by headlines for years. Lacey Peterson, it is said to have made headlines because it was Christmas when she went missing, and so news was slow. Same with John Bonet, which I'm sure it's also because they were both, well, I was going to say pretty white women. Lacey Peterson was a pretty pregnant white woman. John Bonet was a pretty blonde, white, pageant child. But for example, a woman in New York City went missing on September 10th, 2001, but she never got any coverage because 9/11 was the next day. And that's actually still unsolved. We still don't know what happened to her. We don't know, was she abducted, was she killed, was she stay out too late and then was a victim in 9/11? We don't know. And so that's crazy. The news of Princess Diana's death took over, even in the United States. And of course, those are historic examples, but it's kind of cool to see how now, in this day and age, years later with the technology we're in, streaming platforms and even social media platforms have the real-time, real-life effect on news and their headlines and certain cases' abilities to get covered or not. Now, I do want to say I played around with the idea of going ahead and talking about Mackenzie and the documentaries today and splitting it between 2 episodes, but I decided against it. I think for organization reasons, I would rather have it all wrapped up in a bow for Friday. So my plan of attack is to go ahead and tell you the case of Dominic and Davion, which in turn is Mackenzie Shirilla, but I always try to name my episodes after victims when possible. I'm going to type all of that out and do all of my own research. Of course, I already have a pre-existing knowledge, so I'll pull from my own memory and things like that before watching any of the shows. As I said, I have also avoided everything on social media. If I see a picture of her or her parents or anything, I scroll past. On the algorithm feeds me these things because my life is so true crime focused. So TikTok and things like that, I'm trying to save videos that I'll go back and watch later. Once I've finished my script for my regular episode, I'm going to watch both the Netflix and the Hulu documentaries. I will note them, give my opinions, point out issues, probably reference back to my regular episode and talk about all that. And then I do plan on talking about the things that are being said on social media, the fallout that's happening. I have so many things saved to go back to on social media that'll probably be a whole day too. I want to have a plan ahead of time. I want to make sure that I'm not being biased from anybody on the outside. And of course, I've said it once, I'll say it again, documentaries are always going to be biased no matter what. They just are. Whether it's the family of the victim, the family of the accused, the producer, somebody has an opinion that's going to influence the way it is edited and put together and the way things are said. Now, the director, producer, whatever, the team behind this documentary is the same team behind Tinder Swindler. That is very hard to say. And if you're familiar with that documentary, I think they did a wonderful job on it. They did a good job at calling the perpetrator of that out. If you haven't seen it, I do recommend going and watching it. It is a very well-made documentary. So my hopes are high for the production value and them showing small moments and gotcha moments and things like that. But I will say that when you have the family of an accused person involved in the documentary, it gets messy. And lines kind of get blurred, especially when it comes to ethics, if you're going to have the accused family as well as the victims' families. And I don't know if the victims' families are in it. I assume so. Any ethical producer would offer them the chance to talk if they are offering the accused family a platform to talk. So I want to go into it completely unbiased. I am familiar with the production team, so I want to kind of hold them to the standard they have set for themselves. But I'm leaving space to be disappointed, especially because I know her parents are in it, and I do already have set opinions on her parents. I've probably already said it, but I am so absolutely shocked that they agreed to sit down with the documentary after all the backlash they received after the body cam footage dropped and after the trial, because it wasn't good for them either. People disliking them is not new because of this documentary. It has been happening since the trial and since the body cam footage came out the first time. So, like I said, I wanted to get my own opinions without any outside influence, so I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to watch Netflix first, and then Hulu, and then go to social media, and then I'm going to come here and we're going to talk about it. So, I'm excited about that. I'm guessing Friday is going to be a long episode. I apologize in advance. I am probably going to have a whole lot to say, and it's going to be a whole lot of allegedly, because a lot of it will be my opinion. But, like I said, everything is biased, right? Anyways, as always, thank you for listening, and we will be back Friday to talk about Mackenzie Shirilla.